Hello, good afternoon. So my name is Sérgio Rebelo. I am from Porto. Even though I was born in Portugal, most of my career was made abroad, namely in Switzerland, Mexico, and the US. But I moved back to Porto in the year 2018 to open my own practice. We are about 10 people now and 2 dogs, as you can see. And one of the important aspects is that the practice is in Porto, which is a city that developed around the river. The river has become an important instrument to economic development since Middle Age, more specifically on the production of port wine. We see here on the right side, we have the north margin where we have the historical part, but in the south margin, there has been a lot of warehouses that were built for the aging of Porto. But the history of the Douro Valley dates even before that. We know that in this region, the Romans were the first ones to produce high-quality wine because of its microclimate. So the history of this location is more than 2,000 years. In the 18th century, there was an initiative to make this demarked area for the production of wine, making it the first demarked wine region in the world. Our site is exactly in the heart of this very big landscape project, which is basically hundreds of kilometers of mountains that have been carved by men throughout all these centuries. It has been a region that has been very focused in the economy of wine and agriculture, but since the classification of a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2001, so almost 25 years ago, this introduced tourism and diversified the economy. The project that I'm bringing is actually a competition we won to design a winery and a hotel. And we looked really into the site, what is really particular. So it's a site that changes a lot with the seasons, and that all the materiality is quite important because wine tasting and wine production is something that becomes very focused in the senses, in the palate, in the sense, and also in the visual perception of this whole site. So this is our location. It's very, very within the Douro Valley, which is really beautiful. This is actually an extraordinary site. It is very beautiful from the outside, but the site itself in its geometry offers incredible views of the Douro Valley. So this is basically the site for intervention. When we took the site, we realized that the geometry was quite peculiar and was actually good for the introduction of these two different programs, because on the concave part, we could place the winery and use the earth to control the climate in a passive strategy way, while the convex part, we could actually create a hotel with 270-degree views. There is a little chapel that is a very beautiful symbol of the Douro Valley. These are very tiny chapels that are spread out through the territory, and we wanted to build below this line. So the hotel, which is a project, it's under construction and is not the object of the presentation today, but it was designed to become a retreat hotel, almost like a 21st century monastery where all the building is organized around the cloister. On the other hand, the winery was an opportunity to use architecture as a medium to express the Douro in its current state, the Douro Valley, the history of Douro, and how wineries have worked in history, but also what we could do with current technology and current know-how to design the Douro Valley of the 21st century. So the wine cellars in Gaia, so on the other side of Porto, used to be these structures built with two stone walls covered with wood structures that would extend in a very linear way, where the port wine would age for 100 years. Currently, these warehouses are being taken for real estate purposes, and they are being readjusted. Here we can see that these kind of buildings actually were quite sophisticated. This is a structure from late 19th century, and you can already see that in the ceiling and in the roofs, they were quite interesting, using tension cables for triangulating the structure. So we really wanted to take this theme and push it further. but how to make it, since the landscape is actually what is protected in this region, why can we make architecture more integrated with the landscape? So we looked at the geometry of the slopes, and we thought about, okay, this is creating a combination of what is the tectonic knowledge, vernacular tectonics, with the three-dimensionality of the site, which allows us to do multiple things, namely using gravitational systems for the wine production. So this is what the winery looks like when it is on site. It's basically pretty much on transitions in different types of vineyards and actually integrating the walls that have been used to sustain these different slopes into the design of the building. Almost trying to be seamless, like a building that dissolves within the landscape and creates all these different opportunities for programming. So in terms of insulation, the main facade is actually facing north. So we use all the land to protect the building and also the thermal mass to keep it as stable as possible for climate. But we still have these skylights and these perforations that are used to, on the left side they are for the fermentation room. These perforations allow the grapes to drop, but also when this kind of activity is not happening, which happens once a year, it creates these skylights to illuminate the space with indirect light. Climate control is a big issue because in the winter we have about -5 negative temperatures, and in the summer it's actually very, very hot, above 40 degrees with some frequency. So we have a 50 degrees amplitude on the outside, but on the inside, the possible is only 2 degrees of amplitude, between 14 and 16 degrees for optimal oak barrel oxygenation and aging process. So we did this with using the earth and the concrete of the containing walls to stabilize the temperature. But when we have really peaks of cold and peaks of heat, we use the land that usually is at 15 degrees to rebalance the temperature inside. By this, we had a very economic gain on energy. We use the concrete, so for the main structure, the connection with the ground, a very mineral material. And then on top, we put the wood structure now in an innovative way, and also with using companies that were in a 100-kilometer radius from the site. So on top, we have a timber structure with laminated beams and CLT, cladded with GRC panels that were all prefabricated, so the construction was easier and less invasive in the paths that lead to this particular site. By this, compared with a concrete building, we were able to reduce more than 50% of the CO2 emissions. Looking back to vernacular systems, we wanted to, by triangulating using light structures, this was the project during the competition, and then during the construction we were able to start taking out. So by doing a variable section on the structure, we were able to remove the tirants in the middle, and then at a later stage we were actually found out a way to do the connections without screws. So this allowed a reading or a lecture of the building from the inside that was very clean and very natural within this particular context. So here some photos of the construction where we see the connection with the ground with the concrete, and then the shell, let's say, with a lighter structure made in wood. It was very important that this kind of appearance and language was very clear, both from the inside and from the outside. The winery works by gravity, as I was saying, and what this means is that the grapes are dropped from the top. This actually amplifies the quality of the wine itself. Then it ferments on this chamber that is fully protected by the earth, and then the waste leaves and the wine drops into the aging hall where the wine can age for sometimes centuries. Then the bottles go also at this level. So the wine path is from top to bottom, as traditional methods are used in the Douro Valley. The user experience and the tourist experience does exactly the opposite. They arrive at the lower stage, almost like getting into a cave. The temperature changes. They go up into a tasting room. That tasting room also leads to an event space that they are don't exist that much, and they're quite important to diversify the tourism offer within the region. And then there's this almost symbolic bridge between what is the general tourism and a bridge to get to know in detail how the wine is processed for mostly experts. This is how the wood structure sits on top of these wall structures and then cladded with GRC. The material choices was in a way to accelerate the patine process within the buildings so that in a very short period of time, the building becomes almost camouflage, almost like a fossil within the landscape of the schist walls. So we're using the schist, which is a local stone, and concrete and wood. Now this is the building when seen from the top. Here the building integrated with the view facing west and the view facing east. Here we can see that the height of the building in the north part is very low, and then it expresses more on the north side. Again, this idea of... sorry, okay, I'll just go show. All right. So some of the views, again, the building with the river, and now it's integrated with the landscape. This is the fermentation room, where we see that in the production system we have concrete, wood, and stainless steel, and those were the materials also that we used for the interiors. Okay, sorry.
Very interesting presentation. I see under the category production, energy, logistics. And in a way you spend, the main part of your presentation discussing those things, and we are getting to the architecture when you run out of time, a little bit. And I would like you to speak a little bit about that, because in the way that you describe the thing, it seems that the architecture is a consequence of your method of working. But in a way, you also have a very specific desire for a particular kind of architecture through the way in which the rhythm of the construction is working, but also the way in which you create this delamination between the two systems that are going in order to create now a different totality. I think it would be important to sort of ask you, like, what is the architecture of the project beyond the way you describe it through production or energy or logistics? Do you feel there is something that is the outcome of this process, which is deliberately architectural for you?
Definitely. I do believe that architecture is the result of a research process. Yeah. Of course, there is an intention on form, but I think of the form almost as a result. In this particular case, we're talking about an industrial building, because it's what it is. It's a wine-producing facility, but it's a wine-producing facility that is inserted in a context of 2,000 years of wine production. Of course, this was also an opportunity to work with a lot of technology, especially in the construction of the timber structure, also in the control of temperature and this kind of intelligence. But the idea was actually, there's a lot of wineries all over the world that and it has become kind of a tool for wine producers to use architecture to develop and promote their marketing. But in this particular case, I didn't want to do a building that could be anywhere. This was really important to be a building that was from Douro and that talks about the Douro Valley heritage.
Okay. Yes.
In a funny way, I'm reminded of the first Canadian house that we saw, where there was a very particular kind of topography and a known model, in that case the glass, and a different kind of roof. But in yours, you also have a wish to engage with the topography. You also have a known model, the traditional shed and its solid walls and so on. And then in your case, you simply elongate it and twist it. And I think that's my answer to Moisen's question. The willful part is in the wish, willful or romantic, even lyrical part is is to do that. And one then has to ask the question, is that it? I mean, I've just very recently been taken around a winery of slightly more traditional type. But again, the experience of the winery is very much a kind of piece of theatre. You come as somebody pretending you don't know anything about wine, which is probably true. You're then enamored by the elaborateness of the process and the subtleties of the process, particularly if the main winemaker's talking to you. And then you try it. And as soon as, it's rather curious because as soon as you go into the sort of bit where you sample things, you almost switch back to, having a glass or two of wine with friends. It's a curious thing, and I wonder if programmatically or theatrically or in some way, there's not another way of doing it, It's, because it's very easy for people like me to be impressed by gadgetry, even traditional gadgetry, and all the sort of bullshit or not bullshit about, how this is doing this and this is doing that, and there's a particular kind of vessel and that and age of the wood and all that stuff. And you go rather, but I have a feeling that there's some additional piece of the experience that is yet to be discovered. I think yours is a very nice building and it rides the thing well. Of course it's looking to traditions and because there are so many strictures upon what has to happen. But I wonder if there's something more that it could have done. In other words, a bit comfortable.
Yeah.
You can think about that for 1 second. Let me just get other people so you can give a stronger answer.
Yeah, I think you had very beautiful presentation. Also, you have very beautiful site. Then seeing this a very curved contour line, but seeing your building having a straight element split out to branch, then a little bit curved. So I think this what did you consider to have because this wood frame system can be worked to follow this contour line, curvature configuration as well. But did you try to do this more curved linear building shape, or this is more your intention to have a straight to branch out to branch?
So I will respond
Two questions.
first and then to you. First, I want to say that when I was invited to this competition, I didn't know anything about wine production or wineries. And I took a lot of time to visit wineries, and specifically wineries from this region. And because I found out it was so complex and so fascinating, I wanted that the building could say what I was learning without me having the need to say it. For example, gravitational systems of producing winemaking. For example, that concrete is a better material to preserve temperature and as an inertia to keep the temperature cool. There are some sensations as you go through the building. When you come outside and it's 40 degrees and you enter the building, there's a thermal shock. And you feel that in your skin. The whole experience of wine tasting is very sensorial. It's about taste, it's about smell. So all these things are built as a narrative as you walk through the building. Unfortunately, I could not do that walk. Sorry about that. But it was a way, let's say I'm an architect, we're all architects, we use this as a medium to communicate. So this was an attempt to do it without actually being there. Now, to respond to your question, the structure actually follows, so let's say the topography usually does this as it goes down. This is the natural movement of the Douro Valley. So it's not one volume that spreads out. It's actually almost like an S line that goes through the landscape. And this allows the gravitational system to work. It also connects with the walls that are part of the protected area of the landscape and also creates a very nice movement that when you go through the space, it actually is constantly changing all the time. Like it invites the people to go there to discover. And there's a lot of staircases that are made in concrete inside, so there's a bit of a hide and reveal inside the building that makes it quite of a interesting also for the guided tour and to go from the general points of the view that you have in the wine tasting. You can understand the whole winery, but it actually invites you to discover and to go through it. So it was a way that on the outside blends with the existing topography, on the inside creates something new to discover, almost like an architectural narrative.
Thank you.